With the return of the Parliament, attention is rightly focused on plans to introduce large income tax cuts. But the reality is this is one of the biggest pieces of budgetary legislation ever to come before the Parliament without a serious Senate inquiry. And whatever you think of the merits of the tax cuts, and there are fierce debates on both sides, you'd agree that a reform as large as this deserves Senate scrutiny. Never before has so much budget outlay been proposed without a serious Senate inquiry. These are large tax cuts. The Stage 3 tax cuts alone amount to $97 billion over 10 years. In fact, really only over 5 years, because they don't come into force until 2024. Even by the government's own statements, this is a large reform. Large reforms deserve scrutiny. A Senate inquiry that could look at the changed fiscal circumstances since the tax cuts were announced, the changed economic circumstances since the tax cuts were announced, the likely implications on revenue in 2024, the likely implications on government macroeconomic policy settings or choices in 2024 deserves scrutiny. The government's right. This is a flattening of the income tax structure. Removing a tax bracket, reducing that 32.5% rate to 30% does flatten Australia's income tax system. But that means it's less progressive. That means those at the higher end pay less proportion of income tax than they otherwise would if we kept the tax rates as they are. The reality is income tax earners have been overcompensated for bracket and creep. And of course those at the top end pay more tax. Australia is a low taxing country, but the progressive nature of our income tax system is a bulwark against inequality. Australia doesn't have high wealth taxes, we don't have estate taxes, we don't have death duties, we have a big discount on capital gains tax. We don't have those other taxes that are more likely to help on inequality grounds. So the progressive nature of our income tax system is essential. It does raise a lot of revenue also. And if you're going to cut that amount of revenue, that is going to mean there's going to be less money for schools, less money for hospitals, less money for defence, less money for border security in the future. Whatever way you cut it, this is a big reform.